Hello, welcome to my Minecraft world, and also my first Japanese video, I think, in not over a year. I think the last one I made was in October of last year, so close to a year. Although I don't think anyone has actually watched those seriously, so for right now, it's just it's probably new for everyone who's watching it. And for context, I have been learning Japanese for like 4 years, 5 years, and in that time, some eventually I'm like, oh, let me start making YouTube videos about it because I have interest in YouTube as well, and I've slowly gotten into more like shit. I've slowly gotten into like making like YouTube content with it and everything. So my Japanese videos used to be about like me I guess I don't know how to describe it, but like it just me basically me talking to a camera and like having no editing with it, and it was kind of cringe because of that. There's never any like purpose. There was never any. I mean, I had a purpose of what I was talking about, but it was always super vague, and it was always like kind of ranty. A couple of my videos were good, in my opinion, but most of them really weren't. So I've since privated them because of that reason, and so nowadays it's just kind of like whatever, you know. So that's kind of the state of everything, and so I'm deciding to like restart my, I guess, like Japanese YouTube journey that I have going on here. So what I'm doing now is I'm doing like this simultaneous like Minecraft thing, and this video obviously is, if you read the title. By the way, sorry about my controls being loud. I know they're loud, but I don't really care enough to fix it, to be honest. But if you saw the title, this is Japanese in Me, and it's essentially going to be about uh, me talking about what my purpose of learning Japanese is and why I have decided to still keep going. Because I've been learning for like 4 years, and I want to really go into. There's videos being split into 5 parts. I really want to go into like every specific like part of, as in like, I want to get into the details of why I think it's still a good idea to keep going, and why I don't think that what the justification in my head on as to why I don't think that like I'm keep on learning Japanese for the sake of just like, I don't know, sort of like I don't think it's any kind of sunk cost fallacy. I don't think it's like any kind of perfection obsessism. I'm like kind of recognizing those points and arguing against it, and I'm going to be first is this intro part where I'm just talking about uh, like explaining what I essentially I already did the intro part, to be honest. You already heard the intro part, but then I'm gonna start kind of talking about what like this broad set, like the introduction, I guess a second introduction into like what I'm like not capable of doing in Japanese, and like what Japanese has like done to me up to now. Some brief history of me, of how I learned Japanese, although not really going into that much. And then I want to get into, first start with like the arguments as my third part. Start with the arguments of why I should like stop learning Japanese, and then really get into the arguments of why I kept decided to keep going. And yeah, and then finally I want to end it with some final remarks that I'll say for the end. So that's how it'll go. What I am and not capable of doing in Japanese, and what makes me why this makes me put myself into an ultimatum. So which is what I have written down. It's I'll start with what I'm like. What like you like Brandon? You say you've been learning Japanese for like what, like you said 4 years, 5 years. It really depends on what you count as start. So I'll start there, and I'll just start with that. I consider myself fluent, although some people I recognize that might disagree with that. and I'll go into why. So I consider myself fluent on like a broader perspective, just because like for my purpose, I think of what I think most people want, like think they want in like be able to do when they first start learning a language, especially something like Japanese, I can do. Like I can watch anime in Japanese and be fine, even without subtitles. It's not great without subtitles. Like I don't understand everything. I don't understand as much as a native speaker, which I'll get into that later. But for like, I think a lot of weebs would kill for my position. And I think that that's really the biggest reason why I call myself fluent, is because like where I've gotten is veritable. I have a lot of like skill that I think a lot of people, or I have a lot of my skill is endeared by a lot of people, which is kind of like, is both a blessing and a curse, because it's like, it's cool, as in like, when I talk to people, they're like, the first thing I tell them about myself is like, oh yeah, I know Japanese. But then it's like, they're just like, oh my gosh, that's like so cool, which is great for me, I guess. I think it's like being like a hot person. Like, I have this skill that is very high in demand, and it's like very sought after, and a lot of people dream of doing it and say they're gonna do it, but then don't actually do it. So, like, and like a lot of people always ask me, like, oh my gosh, how do you learn Japanese, blah, blah, blah. And which is a very complicated story, which I'm not going to explain in this video because it's 5 years of on and off history. But like, I don't think it's really, like, how do I say it? It's not, I want to say it's like not really what it like seems like in terms of like my ability, and that's what makes me like kind of self-conscious, because I'm always at a position of thinking of like having, I mean, this is why I earlier said, like, I think it's like being a hot person. It's like everyone thinks that you're capable of like so much more because of this like apparently like good ability, but in reality, it's just kind of cool. Like I don't have innate happiness, I guess. We're gonna get into that weird conversation. By the fact I know Japanese, like it's not like a solution to all my problems. I'm very glad I did it. I don't think, but it's some people who are at a different position in their lives than me will like almost look up to me and be like, I wish I was like that person. And specifically people who are really want to learn Japanese, like weebs essentially, like are really like, oh yeah, I want to be that type of like position. Like I'm like almost look up to this person, like, which is really uncomfortable for someone who grew up not really thinking they were ever going to be that type of person. Is like, now people are like jealous of me, like what? Especially when I first came out, but it's not like, I'm not like I'm gay, but like I started telling people that like, hey, I actually like learned Japanese, and like I seriously like took it seriously, and I actually like got somewhere. It's like I always get the reaction, like when I introduce myself to people, the first thing they say to me is like, oh yeah, and he's fluent in Japanese, which is like, what? he can speak Japanese, which with how I know myself personally, like there's a lot of parts that I can't actually do. I'm nowhere close to native fluent. I feel like I get away with calling myself conversational. And if you're like into the immersion-based process of learning languages, you know a lot of this already. So I think like a lot of people split fluency into like, I want to say 3 levels, which like the first one is like, I guess, classroom fluency, which really doesn't mean anything. And it's like, you know, all like the technical words and stuff, but like, or like a lot of these like basic grammar rules, and like in Japanese specific, you know, like, I don't know, 1,000 kanji, maybe 500,000 kanji, and then it's like, and like all these grammar rules and some like 1,000 most common words, but it doesn't really mean anything if you've never actually immersed or anything. But that one, basically, honestly, classroom, like traditional learning, like if you don't have any immersion, then you're not going to be able to get anywhere, which is TLDR, if you want a TLDR of how I taught myself Japanese, that's what it is immersion. I learn it in context with like actual like TV shows and stuff, and like mostly anime, because that's like what makes Japanese kind of easy in a sense. So like that first level of fluency where like you like know you're equipped to immerse, but you haven't actually immersed yet, and some people you can feel good with that position. But it doesn't actually mean anything if you can't really do anything with the language because you don't have the practice yet. And then there's a second level of fluency, which is, well, I'll get to that. There's a second level of fluency, which is conversational fluency, which is like, I think the basis of it is when it gets to your speaking ability. Like, staita koto ga tsutairu. Like, anything you want to say, you say. You can say. Like, it's not, and that's specifically speaking, and I think in context of like something else, and like say, I don't know, like listening or like reading, like you can, anything that you feel like you should be able to, you can at least get like the general point of, is I think what's the most important part. Like you're functional. If you ever go to the country, you're functional. Like that type of thing. That's where like, actually I'll get to me in a second after I explain the last tier, which is just native speaker fluent. This is what you are in your native language. You're like, you can like make puns and do poetry, and like you don't even have to think to speak it. Like it's just so natural to you. But I don't think I should have to explain that much, just because it's not really something that like you are if you are watching this, you're most likely a native speaker of English, if not very, very, very good. So good that you can probably get away with calling yourself a native speaker anyways. So it's not, I don't think like really anyone watching this video is gonna be like, oh, by the way, it's raining pretty hard outside in real life. It is definitely a doshabuki, but so I'm sorry if they can hear that. When I mean like where I'm at is somewhere in between conversational and like native. I'm obviously nowhere close to native. I think it's like I'm closer to conversational than native speaker fluent, but some good thing about being in a savannah is that you don't have to deal with rain. Oh, it's like a river biome. When I cross the river biome into another savannah, I get like rain for a second and then it goes away. But that's a side comment. Like native speaker fluent is like, I almost want to say I kind of make a second tier in between the native speaker and conversational, and that's like, that is currently, I mean, a little bit of a spoiler going ahead of myself, that's currently what I want to be able to get to, of like this like satisfactional fluency that's somewhere in between like what you like very proficiently conversationally fluent, I guess, where like everything you want to do you can do. What I'm at is everything I want to do I can do, everything I want to say I can say, everything I can pick up any reasonable book. And obviously I can't read like deep philosophy or like some weird subject, like within reasonable territory I can pick up pretty much any book, any anime show, whatever, and at least understand the general point. I miss a lot of details, and I want to get to the point where my fluency is like, oh, I actually do understand a lot more of these like specific I don't know what to call it, like little nods, but like at the same time not be like, I don't know, like just so get to a point where like I can still I don't know, it's some weird point between like native speaker and just general meaning, like, which is, I'll get to that more deeper and when I get to the more deeper arguments later in this video. But it's like, what's important about that is that what I'm at currently, I know I have a third pickaxe. I have a third pickaxe. Shit. Yes, my game is in Japanese. But I'll just kind of try to transition this to the like what I'm actually functional with in Japanese. Like what can I do in Japanese? Yeah, like I've just been saying I can understand general. I'll be more specific. Like I can pretty much understand like any. I'm gonna go a little bit more deeper into detail. I mean, I can just pick up an anime and watch it. Like I can figure out the plot. I understand enough words that I can figure out the plot. I'm also very good at reading. Reading is like it's probably by far my best skill. I was one of the people who like just learned way too many kanji for my own good and like got like very very skilled at that very fast. And like I think I know like 3,000. I officially learned like 3,000 kanji. Obviously I don't remember all of them. I know like probably can recognize word like pronounce words with like around like say 2,000 kanjis is where I'm at. That actually has like meaning to me. Yeah, past that point, I can I can like read any book with like very very ease. When I was in Japan actually, something that stuck out to me is yes, I went to Japan for a week, just FYI. Is something that stuck out to me is that like it didn't feel foreign. That's the biggest reason I like kind of justify calling myself fluent. Is like one of the biggest appeals I think of going to Japan for people is like it's very safe country, but it's also like you get like this foreign experience at the same time. I didn't get that foreign experience. I'm just too good at Japanese. I know too much of it. I know too much for it to be foreign. It's not that different to me. Like everything just kind of made sense, if that makes sense. Like I can understand road signs. I can understand eavesdrops on people's conversations. I could talk to people and ask fairly easily what I want to order. As a matter of fact, I never got Nihongo Jozu, which if you're not familiar it directly translates to you're like amazing at Japanese, but it usually has this hidden side meaning of like them saying that to try to be nice and encourage you. So that's like something that's like really important I think to keep in consideration when you get told. But like it's something that's like it's basically it indirectly means you need to work on your Japanese, but thank you for learning it. Thank you for getting somewhat, at least trying. That's what it indirectly means. And I never actually got that, which I think kind of implies, unless I explicitly asked, which I did explicitly ask once, but I think that it's like a different meaning. But I think it kind of implies that's like, oh, my Japanese was good enough that people will be like, oh, you actually know Japanese. Like, I don't need to tell you that, like, oh, well, you still need to get better. I don't need to encourage you. It's just, yeah, your Japanese is good. Like, whatever. Cool, what do you want? So yeah, I never got, like, Nihongo Jozu. This is another big thing, I stayed with my friend. I'm debating if I should say his name or not. Okay, I'm not going to say his name, but a good friend I met in college, and he is Japanese, and I stayed with him and his grandmom, and his grandmom does not know English, and the entire time I was there, I never spoke English once, and I think I was there for like 3-4 days, so like I never spoke English a single time. I think I might have spoken it like once to my friend to like clarify something. That was like, I think like to clarify like a word, it was like not even a sentence, like just like a simple word. That's like it's the extent of like the English I spoke, and that's me being like completely honest. And so like I was able, everything I needed from like in terms of communication from between me and the grandmom like was able to be said, and like it was. Like I even had a decent conversation with her too. I'm able to function perfectly fine, which is why I say I'm like, yes, I'm fluent. Everything I want to do, I can do. And a lot of people who past version of me who was admittedly a massive weeb who overly romanticized Japan, would kill for that. Like, oh my gosh, you actually know Japanese. Like that's the reaction other people get from me, like from a foreign perspective, or like just like IRL. Like it's the reason why people are like literally just introduce me to their friend and be like, oh yeah, hey, this is Brandon and he's fluent in Japanese. Like it's the first thing they say. Which does partially annoy me because it puts me at like it tests me, but that I'll get to that in a second. And it's like I'm capable of all this. I'm capable of all this stuff. But then I get to like what I'm not able to do. So when I talk about anime or like reading a book, So I'll say I currently pause. Like I'm currently like taking like doing Anki stuff hard, like doing like sentence cards and all that stuff. If you know what that is, like if you don't, sorry, I'll try. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not gonna explain in this video, but it's how I learned Japanese. Look it up by Matt versus Japan if you're curious about the process. That I basically do what he did, so, except with a little bit more exception because I'm doing it a little newer. But that's really getting into territory that's not part of this video. So, but like when I'm learning Japanese now, I like when I pause anime to like clarify sentences. I'd say to clarify a word I don't know, I'd say close to like once every other scene that has decent language in it. And I decide to make a card about like I'd say on a healthy level about like 3 times a video, which that doesn't mean I don't understand 3 words per anime episode on average. There's some episodes I have like 7, some episodes I have like close to none or like 1 or none. Do keep in mind, but it's like, and by the way, when I'm referring without subtitles, by the way, like pure listening Japanese, like without subtitles. If I had subtitles on, it'd be actually a lot lower, but that gets into more reading territory. But like without subtitles, I'm able to understand like, I think, like just pure raw. I pause about, yeah, like I don't know. I want to say like close to 10 times per 30-minute episode, which, and now keep in mind, if I was just casually watching something, I wouldn't pause that many times because I'm just casually watching something. I wouldn't feel a need to pause that many times. It's not necessary, but I think like that's just showing like how much. I might be much more than that, to be honest. Maybe it's less. I'm overreacting. I don't know, but like I'll say a general estimate of like that what the feeling is, which I don't think the number matters. But what the feeling is, it's like 10 times per episode. Which what that implies is like I can, in terms of like the little details that I'm not understanding. Like think of like you're watching a show and that's also only the times I decide to pause. Sometimes I'm lazy and I don't feel like pausing, so it's like. Which you should be lazy and not decide to pause because that's just healthy for your sustainability. But like I like would say I decide to like make some like amends to how I'm like understanding stuff like that often enough that like when there is 2 different types of styles that when I consume Japanese content. There is a style of when I'm learning and a style of when I'm like trying to understand new vocabulary and stuff, and like and the style of just casually watching, because I mean, I'm sure when you like read, especially reading a book or something, you will like have to look up words and like not clarify stuff you don't understand or come across it. Maybe you're too lazy to look it up, but you just come across it. It's a lot more than that, and it's a lot more. It's frequent enough, I'd say, that sometimes I come across a word I don't understand, and it's like a core enough to like the main scene of this, like the sentence of that is like the scene of the part or whatever, and it comes to the point that I'm actually missing a decently crucial detail, not crucial enough that I can't figure it out eventually, but that's the thing. When I mean I can figure something out, I mean like I have to I almost have to work with the show, which is it's that's really what the difference between I think my level of fluency or just basic conversational fluency, the fluency I want, and then also native fluency. Native fluency is where like nothing really you don't ever have to look up stuff up realistically. Like yeah, like people are like, oh, native speakers learn new words, but like most of the time, like if you don't want to look stuff up, you can get away with it perfectly fine. And then me, where there's sometimes major scenes that I have to look up. I want the fluency I want, and that I found out that I'm seeking for is a level of fluency that I am is essentially, yes, there's a lot of words I don't know, and yes, there is stuff I don't understand, but the words that I don't know don't make it so that I'm able to just casually watch something. I sometimes say I'm able to casually watch stuff as like bragging rights, but honestly, that's not true. It's enough. There's enough words that I don't understand in enough context, or like listening, or like maybe like talk too fast or something that I'm not able to understand. That it's makes it so that it bothers me that I still want to keep learning, I think is a pretty good explanation of it. And yeah, and other stuff I can't do. When I was in Japan, I got like really fatigued to speaking Japanese by a certain point. Oh my, what the heck? I got like really fatigued to speaking Japanese by a certain point that like I was basically not functional. Like the friend I was with, I felt started to feel bad for him by a certain point. I would I got so sick of speaking Japanese and not able to fluidly speak it for like a week straight that I eventually my grammar basically became like a couple words, like a couple nouns and like a verb, and you just figure out the rest by context and maybe like one grammatical particle. It was super weird. Yeah, overheard him talking to his father once, and he was like, "Wow, bunpo wa skoshi okashi yo." It was like really funny, but yeah, it basically means like, oh yeah, his grammar was like a little funny. So it's yeah, that's something that I would like to point out, and I've identified why. I'll go into make entirely other videos with more specifics as to why I'm not able to just consistently talk like that. But it gets really into like I don't have part is the simplest answer I gave is I practice, obviously, and that's like the answer to like everything. That's the answer to like life's problems, like practice. But it also really gets into like I have a history of like stress with my Japanese and like stress of like I'm not able to like live up to people's expectations and such. So what that gets into is like when I mentioned earlier of like people thinking I'm actually when I hear like fluent, they might assume that I'm like actually able to do like so much like what they can do in their native language, and I like need to feel like I live up to that. So I put myself at such a high standard that I'm not realistically able to do, and then I screw up because of that. Which is partially why I hate when people say that. It's fine. I think I should kind of start getting into like the deeper arguments as to why I stopped or why I should stop and why I really question why I'm still here. And I think the most basic thing is like I want to do something else with my life. It's not waking up doing Anki is not the most glamorous thing to do in the world, really. So it's like if I could move on with something with my life, that's the most basic argument. It's not. It's a the work part of it is something I've been doing for so long now and it's fatiguing. But getting more specifically, I think it's like I need to stop somewhere because I was just explaining with like I have a lot of stress with my how I like taught myself Japanese. That where I feel like I need to live up to people's expectations. I need to find like a middle ground with myself that is comfortable with like what I think people think of me. So what that means is like I need to find like I don't know, people like simultaneously think I'm really good and then also think that I'm actually not that good, which makes me want to be like makes me anxious for both reasons. I want to live up to their expectations, but then also I want to prove them wrong. Like some people, there's like the people who like sometimes simultaneously think like, oh my gosh, he like learned all this Japanese, but then they're just like, oh my gosh, he like is probably just a weeb and lol. Like it is a simultaneous battle in like two opposite directions, and it's kind of the pain. I think the biggest hard part about learning Japanese is because it has so much societal significance to people. Like if I went and learned freaking Swahili or something, people would just be like, why? Or, oh, I ran over. Why? What the heck? Good for you. Which is that is the response that I want. I want people to be like, good for you. That's cool, I guess. Like it might sound rude, but that's the response I want because it puts me at the least amount of pressure. It's chill, you know. Like that. So what the heck? There was a diamond sword in here. And that's another reason why I want to stop learning Japanese. I want to stop fighting that battle. It's not exactly fun. This battle of anxiety. And then also another reason is like I need to find an end with like I don't want to be I don't want like again I don't want to be learning Japanese forever, and I think that's a simple way of putting it, but there's also like the end game of like when do I become if I'm not satisfied with what I'm able to do now, then will I ever end? Is the big question. Like if I'm not satisfied with not being able to like oh, you're able to watch anime, basically. Like, okay, yeah, you can't understand some scenes sometimes, like, but whatever. Okay, yeah, like, you get fatigued when you get in Japan, but you don't live there, and I don't, and this is another thing, I don't want to move to Japan. I genuinely don't. Like, I, when I first started learning Japanese, I really did. I definitely had a phase of romanticizing Japan, but I don't want to now. I think the Japanese economy is shit. They're it's especially compared to the United States, and this is like a whole other video I want to make on its own in terms of um like Americans, especially Americans, like being like, oh, I want to move to this country, blah blah blah, because America sucks and has all these problems. It's like I I used to agree with that a lot, and I still do. Politically I'm pretty progressive, but it's like it's just such a one. With Japan in specific, it's one, their economy kind of sucks. I feel like if I moved to Japan, I'd be kind of stuck in Japan. So like, if I were to move to Japan, I would have to make it would have to be like, I'd only move to Japan if I like got married to a Japanese woman or something, which like I'm not exactly going out of my way to do that. That's kind of weird. So like if I did naturally, I guess, fall in love with a Japanese woman, like I get, and then I moved to Japan, or if I had like a really specific job in like my field that's like just would make sense to not pass up, or wouldn't make sense to pass up, I moved to Japan. Like under those circumstances, those like two main circumstances, I would be like, okay, maybe I'll move to Japan because it is attractive. Trains are cool. Healthy food is cool. Living a long life is cool. Being in a safe environment, very anshin, you know. It's like there's a lot of reasons I think. Like I understand why people want to move to Japan and like why it's such a. I know I was there. I guess is another thing. But it's like, I don't realistically, especially after going there and me kind of just being like, it felt so familiar to me that like, I know like like intrinsic parts of my happiness is not going to be affected by living in Japan. It just won't. I'm not, that's not where I'm at in my life. So that's like another thing is I'm just not, that's another thing that like demotivates me from learning Japanese. Also another thing, declining age, population, that's never good. And like when I went to Japan, I was in a rural area and I was like, oh my gosh, there's a kid. I don't feel enough of a connection to Japan yes, I learned Japanese and I would function there. But like I would, especially as a foreigner, I'd probably get paid like shit. I probably would work like at least even okay job, even with like my engineering degree, blah, blah, blah. It's like, so like there's not, like a lot of I think that motivation to be really good at Japanese isn't there, so that makes me like, what's the point, I guess. And when I say what's the point, then that's like, why should I stay here? And why should I, if there's no like hard reason for me to be really good, then why even try? Like it's like almost like it's kind of like a bit of a toxic belief, I think, which is why I am deciding to still keep learning. But it's like I need to stop. But it is true. I need to find a stopping point eventually, because if I'm just spending like constantly thinking like, oh, I need to get thinking about the next thing, then I'll never stop, and I don't like the idea of me never stopping. So yeah, that's really the big thing. I think Matt versus Japan had like basically had like the horror story version of that, where he kind of like he got like good at like pitch accent and shit, which I have no. I mean, I know pitch accent, and I want to be able to be like knowledgeable enough of pitch accent to like be able to like not sound like a complete idiot. But like I don't mind having an accent, I think is the moral of the story. Also, the speed that bamboo grows is like, once I'm done, this is going to be all grown back, and it's like an infinite cycle. But so if I never stop learning, then I'll never stop, or like never stop, find a point at which I'm satisfied, then I'll be in this cycle like forever, and I don't want to be stuck in this cycle forever. I swear that's not the direction of the meeting I'm going for. It's like, but I feel like I know what it feels like to be Japanese. It's like it's like weird feeling of like I have this understanding of a lot of things of how they work that like I didn't have before. but mostly noted by how unforeign Japan familiar me going to Japan felt. So it's like I feel perfectly like functional like that. Like I feel like just so natural that it's not really a problem for me to like not understand some stuff. But as I mentioned, there are in like animes and stuff, there's like still enough that I'm not understanding that it's basically like problematic to me, that like I feel like even though I have to a point that's like satisfactory, I'm not at the point where it's like I'm satisfied in myself. It's satisfactory to what I set out to be, but my goals change. So, and I'm going to talk about a little bit more about, more specifically, why I'm keeping on going, and outside of just the argument of, oh, the fluency argument of like, oh, there's there's a little bit more that I want to pass. I think the first thing is like I haven't passed the N1 yet, and I have tried. That's like the first time I tried, like I like bombed the listening section, which obviously I've worked on a lot of my listening since then, and yeah, I want to pass the JLPT N1 and just get a little bit of more of those connections with Japan that I'm like very close to getting, that I feel like it's not like if like for example when I previously mentioned like, oh, I wouldn't move to Japan unless I got like a job or something. I want, like with the job specifically, like I think it's important if you want to get a job in Japan, like, oh yeah, you need the N1. So like I'm not just, I feel like if I didn't get the N1, then I'd just be throwing away even the possibility. I'm not against moving to Japan entirely. I think it's the point of me saying that. So like I like the idea in some aspects, but I'm not gonna just like completely ignore, like not even let it happen and just drop it here. Like that's a really big one. Like I want to at least have the door open of maybe potentially me getting that job. I'm not going to get the job if I don't understand Japanese, you know. Like the type of job that I want is not one that where just everyone speaks English, you know. Like not some international company. Like I want something a little bit more than that. So like that's a very big thing for me. And if I don't even open that door, then it won't happen. It's like that's like the core of like why I would want the N1. So, and if I that's, and also just in general, yeah, tests don't mean everything, but like they exist for a reason. I think just even with myself, it is satisfactory if I have the N1. And another thing is I want to like, yeah, I already explained like a lot of my understanding problems, but and like I want to obviously be a little bit more fluid when I go to Japan, and like fluid and like be able to not have like that fatigue problem. That's another big thing. I want to and actually I'm gonna stop talking about like what I want to do with my Japanese, but also like in general, like what I am very like confident with in my like I okay. Learning Japanese is like kind of a stabilizer of my life. Every time something fucks up and I go back and start learning Japanese again, things are okay again. Like it's like this, because I'm not as consistent as like someone like Matt versus Japan, say like Matt versus Japan, but I'm consistent enough that I've kind of made this machine in my mind that like I have so much momentum in terms of like how I learn Japanese. Like it, when I'm learning Japanese, it's like almost awakes me, I guess. So it's like it gets me going in a way that like it almost puts my life together. Like for example, I don't normally have like stuff like a calendar, but now I have a calendar again. Like because I'm starting to learn Japanese hard again, and like now I have a calendar again, and like that's like just organizationally, objectively better. So it's like I'm actually a little bit more on top of my stuff, and like not just being some lazy boy that's like yeah. So I don't know, like a very guy thing to like not know what the heck you're doing and it's being so vague. Like now I have a lot more of my stuff together, so it's like basically me being. I'm trying to get over here. Basically like me. Yes, I know scaffolding exists before you yell at me, but basically like me being like more on top of my stuff because it's enough of a motivation to me that it like automatically puts my life together. I don't have like I struggle personally with like having a lot of days where I'm like, what the heck did I just do with my time? I feel like I'm wasting my time. When I'm not learning Japanese. When I do learn Japanese, I don't have that. I feel like I have it's almost like an ikigai type thing, like a purpose to my life. It's not as cheesy as it does sound, but it's not just purpose in my life as in like, oh, it's like, oh yeah, Japanese, it's I'm putting everything towards this one culture that I'm not even a part of. Like, no, I don't mean like that. It's like, I mean purpose as in like, it gets rid of the problem of one of my bigger problems in my life of just like, oh, I don't have, like, what am I doing with my time? What am I doing? Why, like, otherwise I don't have a strong enough hobby where like I just end up kind of just watching YouTube videos all day. And then it's like, I don't like that life. It doesn't feel good, you know? It feels so pointless. So like if I have that problem taken away, then that it just makes my life better. Like, so I think that's simple enough to understand. It's not, I don't like that. Again though, I want to find, I don't want to have Japanese only be my key to doing that. Because, I mean, eventually, if you want to look at it from a perspective, eventually if I keep on, like, living my life, eventually I'll just learn all the Japanese. Fuck. I'll learn just all the Japanese I need to learn, and then, like, I won't really get anywhere. And then I'll, like, run into having no purpose in my life again. So, like, eventually I'm going to have to find something else to work on, I guess, in that perspective. But, was I going to go? Okay. So eventually I'm going to have to find something else, and that's another thing. It's, like, but, like, more especially, it's, I don't want to, because it's not fun. It's not, like, I do have problems with, I'm very excited in how I'm learning Japanese right this second, but I know it will end. I know eventually I'll get tired of it, and then I'm going to not have that support network of having Japanese anymore. And what I'm hoping is that, like, I'm able to get to a point of being satisfied with my Japanese where that doesn't matter, but yeah, so that's a really big thing. So hold on, let me just give myself a second to figure out what I'm gonna do with this house. I'm gonna cut the video. I think the biggest really thing that, like, and by the way, I'm starting to wrap up this discussion. The biggest thing that, like, I really found with me is I found, like, that new method of basically trying to find, like, I call it, just to give it, I want to make an entire video on this, but I call it, like, emotional skill. I'm very technically good at Japanese, but I have a little emotional skill. What I mean by emotional skill is, like, say you hear, like, I don't know, haha ga shinda, which literally just means my mom died. If you don't know Japanese, that probably sounded like noise. But I do know, I do have enough emotional skill where that does actually, like, kind of give me, like, a ring. You know, so it's, but a lot of other like, not as straightforward words don't really mean as much to me, and because of that, I get fatigued a lot quicker because I'm only using the technical side of my brain, and essentially it's like, I don't want to be so technically good, I don't want to get to the point of being so technically good that, like, it doesn't, like, I don't think that's worth it to, like, to solve the fatigue problem. I think it's better to solve the fatigue problem by making it kind of like an emotional connection that, like, oh yeah, I learned Japanese, you know. So that's kind of badly explained, but I'll make an entire video on it, more explaining it in detail. And yeah, I think that's kind of closing out this video actually. It's yeah, I really did. So I think I did explain everything well enough, even though it was ranty. Sorry about that. I'll watch this video and make comments for the next time I make this type of video to, like, not be so ranty and, like, be a little bit more concise with my points. So yeah, if you got this far, thank you for sticking with me. And yeah, but, like, just the summary is, like, I don't want to be learning Japanese forever. Like, I think in terms of, like, what I plan, in terms of, like, me potentially, like, stop learning Japanese, it's, like, I think really the biggest thing is, like, I would love to learn another language, obviously. Like, I think the most obvious one is, like, oh yeah, go learn Chinese, or Mandarin, more specifically. Is that gonna break this? I hope not. I'll find out the hard way. um, and like, which is actually something like specific to me. Is like I did actually try learning Mandarin for like 2 months as like a break period when I was learning Japanese, but then eventually of course I stopped, and oh no, oh I have two left and there's one. Okay, I'm not picking that last one up yet. Well, yes I will. It's like there's like the school I go to has a lot of Chinese speakers, so it would make sense for if I don't want to move and then I have to make all these connections with all these Chinese people, and it would like make sense from a plain perspective like that. So yeah, and like I want to move on. Even outside of language learning, there's just other things I want to do in general with my life. Like I want to be like play more Nintendo games again. I know that sounds kind of vague. Obviously, like I would like to have like a family and blah 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 one day. So it's like the more general things like that. Like I want to like get myself into. I don't want to be just. I don't like it that much that when like how people introduce me is like, oh my gosh, this guy knows Japanese. That's not really the most preferable thing to me. But yeah. Uh, Thanks for sticking with this again. As I said, I'm gonna try to keep this video under an hour. It's as unedited. It is currently 57 minutes. I am going to edit it though. If I don't, you can call me out in the comments. If I'm lazy and just end up posting it as is, you can call me out in the comments. But yeah. Oh, and here, if real quick, what I'm doing in Minecraft actually. If you're wondering, I'm trying to build like some weird, I don't even know, some kind of house here. It's like with bamboo, it says a main ingredient. I have like another house right there, and I was like in the beginning of the video, I was playing some of my chest in my third house. My purpose of playing Minecraft is really weird. So yeah, that's it.